Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and today we're remembering Mean Girls. Do you remember Mean Girls? I'm sure you do. Mean Girls is Lindsay Lohan in probably the highlight of her career. By far the best thing she's ever been in. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Lindsay Lohan fan. I have her music on Spotify. I have her CD. I love Lindsay Lohan. Um, or Lohan, however you say it. I'm going to go with Lohan because that's how I've always heard it. Um, so, Mean Girls. So here's the thing. Mean Girls is interesting because it came out in the early 2000s. 2005 or 6, 3, 4, somewhere in there. Uh, Early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. So it does have that late 90s, early 2000s aesthetic, where we're like coming off of the MTV generation and we're just sort of like, all right, we rode the high of the cocaine 80s. We went through depression through in the 90s, and now we're like picking ourselves up and we're adults finally. 9/11 has happened and shook us to our fucking core, and now we're trying to make sense of the world. And here comes Mean Girls. Um, so that's the context this movie came out. It's written by women, and it's starring mostly female actors and actresses, with some men or male characters thrown in the mix because you gotta have them. You gotta have the love interest. You gotta have the best friend, the guy best friend, probably gay best friend, but they're not like very clear on that. Um, I mean, he's queer coded, but they make a reference that he's gay, but they never like do anything with it. You know, so it's one of those, yeah, you just know he's gay, but like he's not like, being gay isn't like all he is. Um which is weird. But Mean Girls is it's interesting for a lot of reasons. One, it's beloved by a lot of people, especially a lot of trans people love this movie. Um Myself included. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, it gave us a kind of behind the curtains, inside look into, how teenage girls think and operate. When you're trying to learn how to be a girl, when you're living a lie and you're having to pretend to be something you're not, all you got is movies and, television. And that's not a great way to learn about, the gender you're trying to represent. Um, but Mean Girls is one of those movies that definitely offered that to trans people as well as, cisgender girls. They obviously latched onto it. The story is about a girl who was homeschooled in Africa by her parents because they were, I guess, anthropologists or something. And she moves to the city, and I'm not sure if it says what city it is. It's probably somewhere in California from the looks of it. And she has to go to public school for the first time in her life, and she does not fit in. But the story is she is noticed by the popular clique, and in a prank, they let her sit with them to try to, you know, well, they're basically pranking her, but she actually pranks them back and becomes the popular girl. And then there's if you've seen the movie, obviously the burn book. Um, Once the pages of the burn book get out, all hell breaks loose, and we have chaos for 20 minutes, which is the highlight of this movie. Um, yeah, there's a subplot about, something about kids being, you know, awful to each other and trying to fit in and justify fitting in. And there's something about, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we like observed this snooty, rich, popular bitch and then just destroyed her? And then in their attempt to do that, they become her, and it's a big mess. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the time Mean Girls came out does mean there are some problematic stuff in there. There are some uncomfortable racist jokes. There are some uncomfortable homophobic and ableist comments. The R word is used more than once casually, which is unfortunate. Um, and again, there's homophobia rampant in this movie because this was at that time where it was still socially acceptable to be homophobic. It was never okay. People are people. Leave us alone. Just let us live our lives. We're literally not hurting anyone. So shut up and let us live our lives. We're not hurting anyone. Jesus Christ. But anyways, it's a fun movie, and even though it has issues, I rewatch it once a year. Me and my girlfriend watch it every year on Mean Girls Day, um, which is an internet thing among people our age, which is a reference to a line in the movie. There's also a subplot where the girl's really smart. Lindsay Lohan's character is really smart, and her teacher wants her to join the mathletes, but she has a crush on a boy who's not smart, and so she plays dumb to trick the boy to tutoring her so she can spend time with him, even though he has a girlfriend, and his girlfriend is her, phony BFF. It's a whole thing, which is what leads to the big climax where the burn book gets released to the public and everybody goes bonkers because they're like, bitch, you said what about me? And then it's just, the claws come out, the teeth come out, and chaos for 20 minutes. Which again is what most people remember of this movie. Again, it's sort of a relic because of the time it was made. They spend most of their free time at the mall, which is a thing teenagers did back then because malls were, you know, um, jumping and it was the place to go, which is sort of a foreign concept to modern audiences, especially teenagers today, who probably can't relate to that because they've either never been in a mall or if they have, it was a ghost town and they're like, why the fuck were people spending all day here? This place sucks. Um, so yeah, obviously the mall is a relic, which does date this movie considerably. Not in a bad way though. Mean Girls is still a lot of fun. Now there is a musical, there's a remake, there's a book, there's a whole franchise of Mean Girls material out there if you want more than just the original movie. Or if whatever reason, you don't like Lindsay Lohan or you're just not able to get past the uncomfortableness of this movie, which I respect. If that's the case, no shade. Everyone's different. It makes me cringe every time I watch it, but it's also like, I grew up with it and I grew up at that in that time period. So I was sort of, I would say, immunized to it. Man, I don't have words today. Doesn't make it okay, but it's like, yeah, I was there, I remember it. So I was just sort of like, okay, it is what it is. But it is worth mentioning because it is triggering to some people, especially younger audiences who aren't used to that because they grew up in a better time where we were more sensitive about things like that, you know? And obviously we have better queer representation in movies today, especially teen movies. So Mean Girls isn't a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a hell of a lot of fun. I'm going to be honest with you. I do not remember the first time I watched Mean Girls. I know I didn't see it in theaters. I do own it on DVD. Absolutely. And if it's on streaming and I'm in the mood, I'll sit and watch it. But I know I've seen it too many times to count, which is one of the reasons why I can't really tell you the first time I saw it because I've seen it so many times I could mistake any one of those viewings for my first time and I couldn't really be able to parse it out in my brain. Like I said, I watch it every year in October. on Mean Girls Day with my girlfriend. Um, which I was watching it, 2 or 3 times a year anyways because I love it. And even though I do watch it every year with my girlfriend on Mean Girls Day, I love you, Christina. I love you a lot. I watch it sometimes without her, just on when she's doing her thing and I'm in the mood. I'll just watch it. It's a good movie. I love it. Um, like I said, yes, it's a little problematic and dated, but it's also nostalgic for me. Even though I was no longer a teenager, I was in my 20s the first time I watched it. I had just got out of high school. I was just putting that life behind me. So it was still fresh in my brain. I wasn't watching a ton of high school movies at that time. The high school movies I watched were made when I was in high school. Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Clueless, The Faculty, Can't Hardly Wait, 10 Things I Hate About You. Those movies. Those are the ones I grew up with. Mean Girls was sort of the tail end of that. Even though it wasn't made in the 90s, it feels very 90s. It could have You could have told me it came out in 99 and I would have believed you. Except for Lindsay Lohan would have been like 7 years old in 99. So it would have been weird for her to be playing a 16-year-old. Uh, but yeah, yeah, it's a good movie. I enjoy it a lot. Speaking of Lindsay Lohan, in 97 or 98, she was a child playing in The Parent Trap, which is another staple of my childhood. We'll talk about it another day. So, Mean Girls, fun movie. Definitely worth checking out.